Good morning. I think I would like us to begin. We have a very full schedule today. So I would like to welcome everyone to the Share Family Workshop today. We have a very full agenda, and so the opening remarks are going to be very brief so that I can leave the most amount of time to my colleagues. For those of you who know us, this is not going to be a new slide, but for those of you who are new, the Share family is committed to a linked data ecosystem. So we are a group of initiatives in basically throughout the world that we are working on and concentrated on developing the linked data ecosystem and how we curate the data between different needs and different groups, from libraries to galleries to museums to other cultural heritage institutions, but also how we can facilitate the use and reuse of data from all aspects. So from collections development to acquisitions to discovery, to access to materials. This is where our focus is. And the important part of Share Family, and one of the things that makes me very, very proud to be a member of it, and the thing I think that's most important to stress is that we are completely member-driven. So the decisions that are made on what to develop and where to focus our energies is coming from the membership. We are committed to that, and we want to maintain a transparent member-driven model. And we also have a deep commitment to open data. So we want to make sure that the data can actually be used in a sustainable manner, and that expertise can be shared and developed across the field. So with that, I'm not going to continue on. I could talk a lot more because I have many things to talk about, but I will let you know that there are, that we have links available in the slides, and the slides will be made available shortly after the session for those of you who would like more information to see what we're doing. And as always, you're welcome to reach out to us with any questions that you might have. So I want to get on to today's agenda. As you can see, it's quite full. We're asking that you hold questions to the end. There will be a question and answer session after all of the presentations. And with that, I'd like to introduce Tiziana Possemato, and she will give a demo of the JCricket linked data editor.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for this occasion. I had already the occasion to show you something about JCricket, but for people who were not present in other presentation, briefly, I explain what JCricket is. JCricket is the Bibframe editor that was born within the shared community to manage the cluster knowledge base, or what we are calling the entity knowledge base. The entity knowledge base is the knowledge base that contains all entities produced by automatic processes during the phase of commercial, but before the commercial Bibframe, we have the identification process and the transforming record in entities. All entities are stored in a complex environment with different data storages, and is the result of an automatic process. So we can assume that something can go wrong, is not perfectly correct. So in this case, the librarian can use JCricket to enhance the quality of the data. JCricket start, I tried to search something. JCricket start exactly from the same port result, so the end user result. And so the starting point is the same that the end user can use. And so with the same search functionalities and same browsing possibilities and so on. So apparently the result is the same. I can search for a person, for any kind of entity that the Bibframe model considers, with addition of entities that the share family, specifically with the Sapientia Entity Identification Working Group, decided to introduce as an extension of Bibframe. And so here you see some possible features, some possible functionalities, but I can log in with a user. Okay, try with this one. And the new features are added to the entity editor. So I can edit now this entity. I can do this with every kind of entity. And now I can start working with my editor. Something that I take this occasion to meet you to better specify. JCricket was born to serve a larger community. So it was born to be used in a larger community of libraries. So as a common tool. And here you can see how this is managed, how it manages the different provenance. So you can have for each kind of data, you can have a variant form of something, of the information, due to different culture, different kind of or rules, cataloging rules applied, or for different user exigencies. So every kind of information, both in the conversion process and as an editor, is stored in a database and never is lost something coming from a specific library. But in the meantime, you could also think to use the whole or part of the load platform in a local system. After Sebastian and Boaz will present something, and we will have additional location to do this in the next month, a different usage of the load platform in a local system integrated with FOLIO. But in the meantime, the library can use the load platform, so JCricket, to manage their internal data and be cooperative, collaborative in a shared environment. So in case the library will use the same load platform locally, you will see only your own provenance, of course. The provenance is something that is very powerful for a community because, as I said before, you can have your own vision of your data. This means, for example, that if you need to use different scripts or different languages, in some cases, you can do, enriching the property, the specific property for each entity. So you have here a different kind of fields. Each fields relate, of course, to a property suggested by the Bibframe model or by the extended model provided by the shared community. And you can add something. For example, you have different kind of fields. You have some textual fields or some controlled vocabularies, and in addition, some links. Links means the relationship between two different entities that are all in the same cluster knowledge base. In addition to this, you can have also external IDs to link your entity to external sources. So when you create something, you can scan, you can search in a vocabulary. And in case you don't have the specific term, you can, for example, I try to do something here. Just to, okay, this is not present, of course. This is just a joke. And in case you don't find the fields you are searching in your vocabulary, you can immediately create a new entity. And so the system can assign a new array. You have whole time to check again this entity, also because the automatic process will check new entities created and run a new clusterization process. But now, in the meantime, when you are working, you can select this and create something on the fly. This is a great powerful because you have the opportunity to extend your vocabularies, but in the meantime, you can connect your item, your voice with external sources. So when the automatic process will find this new entity, this is automatically enriched with other vocabulary and other sources. So in this case, I have an additional entity. Okay, this is not something that is realistic. And the provenance manages the different variant form of the same content, giving you the opportunity to select something that we key the leader of something. The leader is the form that you want to present to your user. And for example, in this case, I have a French form of the name, an Italian form of the name, a German form. I try to log out log out and log in with another account, choosing something from Stanford, for example, a user from Stanford. Give me the time to choose something. For example, this one. So that I can show you something specifically. Okay. Okay, so now I have here one form for Stanford and different for UPenn. And if I search again this and I change my language, for example, in French, I can have immediately the different form for my user. So in this case, I have variant form of the same name in different languages, and the user can search changing the browser and can have directly its own language. And you can imagine how powerful is this for different scripts, Chinese, Arabic, Cyrillic, and so on. So this is one of the potential that the provenance feature give you. I change language, otherwise it become a bit complicated to work with French. And coming back, so in the logs files, in the logs screen, you have reported all different kind of action that a person has done on this entity. This is a very important feature to maintain the control. As I said you before, with some kind of information, you can manage at your library level. So if UPenn decided to produce a variant form a bit different by Stanford, both as user and as consumer, such as an end user or a machine, you can define, in any case, the filter for Stanford and select your own data. But we have some additional information, some kind of entities that cannot be done at library level. You can do this only at network level. For example, when you merge something, so see here, I have two Feltrinelli Giangiacomo, two different form. And so I can check and I can suppose, okay, probably these are the same person. So in this case, I can put this in a merge list. I can propose to merge these two different entities. And I can search, I can select the destination, that means the form that I want to save. And so probably in this case, the form with the extended name. I can select the destination and I can do something, for example, move the note that is not present in the destination entity. I can move it to enrich the final entity. I can select something, change something, or I can add, for example, the given name and the family name. So what I think is important to enrich. But in this moment, I cannot do this merge automatically by myself. I can do with a trick if I assign to myself the work. But it's better to select a new reviewer. And the new reviewer, I search for another person, for example. Okay, Cairo Richardson. I can assign, submit the merge request. Okay. And now, as I log out and I log in again. Okay. Okay, and now in my dashboard, I have the suggested merge function, and I can, as another cataloger, I can agree on this merge, or I can also reject with a comment. So no, please, this is not the same person, please check something. So in this case, as previous user, I receive again a notification that the merge was rejected. And this is the same for the split. Also, the split function has to be submitted to another person. This is something that is really collaborative to make person aware about what they are doing. The last thing that I want to show you, just to give you an update about where we are. Okay. I did because we have few time. Now we are in the phase of testing the whole JCricket system with the features that are already developed with the two different groups of librarians. The first group is already working on June, and the second one we start on July. And probably we will have additional volunteers to do this. And we are receiving feedback. For example, one of the possible feedback is around the usability of the system. We are very happy to have some fields grouped together. It comes from our traditional approach with Mark. For example, I don't know, the place, the date of birth, for an instance, the publication fields. So now we are arranging the user interface to have the ability to group some information also at user interface level. And of course, this means also some changing in the backend. This is one of the features that we are doing. Just to briefly show you, you can also work on different screen altogether. Give me just the time to select. Example here, in Naples. And you can open the meantime different screens. So this is useful, for example, when you need to link something together and when you need to check combining. So when we will finish the first phase of the test, we will for sure release an update version. We have few time, so I'm not able to show you something more. Otherwise, people have not time. And for any question, we are here and on our usual channel. So thank you.
So hi, everybody. Yes, that's what we're going to be talking about, FOLIO in Lehigh University. So I'm Boaz. I'm the university librarian in Lehigh University Libraries. Really excited about us joining SHARE just recently. I know about SHARE VD for a few years, sort of as soon as I think it was conceived. Lots of work that we're hoping to get out of it. So Lehigh has a long history of collaboration with different open source providers. We were one of the first to go with FOLIO, and we were now kind of working with index data on this bigger project that is called CCLP. It's a collaborative collections lifecycle platform. It's an MLS grant that we're looking at how to create collection development and collection management facilities across libraries, across consortia, together with vendors like Index Data and others. Obviously, in order to do collection development, you need some foundational metadata. And if that metadata is linked, is even better, because then we can extend our discovery of different collections that we may be interested in, especially in FOLIO. So I'm going to go, great. Especially with FOLIO, we're interested in the interface, because obviously, you know, like we'd love to have a working application that has an ability to do linked data within FOLIO. We're looking at Dale collection. This is a collection that we got in 2018. That is in our special collections and archive. It has many journals that are translated into many languages. So we have Runner's World and health magazines that were published by the Dale family. And those were given to us, and we're now thinking, well, maybe it's going to be a great project for us to use, share, and explore together in this interface that I was kind of trying to catch up on from Nangle. How are we going to be doing native linked data into FOLIO? We're really hoping that this is going to go like as fast as possible, because I know from Lisa, she's our head of metadata, and this is a quote by her. I think it's missing kind of the highlight, but basically we want to make things that are unknown and are not discoverable known using this system, obviously. So, and we have a developer that is very excited about this work as well. And Lehigh usually contributes development and expertise in metadata or in other areas. So like for us, it's also like a exploration in community building around development, and also like, you know, thinking together about intellectually how to kind of address those things here in this community is very exciting. So yeah, it begins here, and we're gonna start working with you on making it all work out. I think that's kind of the quick version, and maybe I'm now giving it to you, Sebastian.
Yeah, try this. I hope you guys hear me okay. So I have been involved with the FOLIO Library Service Platform project since before it was called FOLIO, since about 2015, when a group of libraries and developers came together with EBSCO to try to envisage a new technology stack for libraries. It's really cool to see this gang of folks from the original stakeholders sitting up here, and it's really neat to be here with Lehigh, who was at the table from the very beginning. But the original conversations about FOLIO from my perspective, and I came to FOLIO as a software developer who has worked in libraries for about 35 years, almost always with a focus on shared infrastructure, on trying to develop technologies to allow libraries to work more effectively together. First for the Danish government, and then later on as index data providing services and doing projects together with libraries. What I thought was really interesting about FOLIO, amongst many other things, was that it was really the first library service platform that was being built with a certain knowledge that we couldn't rely on MARC and all of the processes and workflows and infrastructure and workarounds that we created over the years to support MARC-based copy cataloging. We couldn't rely on that to be our only mechanism. FOLIO would have to exist in some kind of future where MARC would be replaced with something else. And we thought that it was somewhat likely that that something else would be in some way based on linked open data. But we really had no idea what that would look like. And what I mean by that is a lot of the infrastructure surrounding MARC is based on the idea of copy cataloging and maintaining data in local silos and try to reconcile certain differences through things like authority control, but it is fundamentally a very localized single practice. It has always seemed to me that for us to really realize all of the benefits, all of the advantages of linked open data, we would have to move to a more collaborative environment. If we simply take the workflows associated with MARC and we paste them onto a new data format, the results would not be good. We wouldn't realize a lot of the benefits, and I would argue that we might even be worse off. So somehow a shared infrastructure would have to emerge, but we didn't know at the time what that would even look like. So we tried to design FOLIO in such a way that it could accommodate different approaches, thinking that there was going to be an evolution of technologies, but also that there would be different local practices in different countries. So the way that we approach this from an architecture or software design perspective is that we placed in the middle of FOLIO's bibliographic landscape a thing that we call the inventory. And the inventory deals with the holdings, the things that the library manages, the collection. And the fundamental unit in that inventory is the instance. And the instance describes something that you own, an edition of a book or something, a journal that you subscribe to. The inventory and the instance describes that material in a format neutral way. There's an internal data model that's been designed by the subject matter experts in FOLIO to meet the requirements of local data flow of collection management. And that data model is referred to by a lot of different apps in FOLIO, a lot of different workflows, things like request management, things like acquisitions, collection management, all the way through to circulation and discovery and so on. It's designed to be a neutral entry point, a neutral way to describe these resources, irrespective of what data format is actually used to actually describe the material. And what we're seeing then is that that instance, the detailed description of that instance can take place in a lot of different ways. So the green bubbles here represent some of the ways that people are already describing their instances today in FOLIO. Ironically enough, the very first library to deploy FOLIO was Chalmers University in Sweden, which is part of a local Bibframe-based bibliographic environment. So FOLIO was first deployed as a local client to a shared bibliographic environment based on Bibframe. Lots of libraries, for practical reasons, will still use MARC and will probably continue to do so for a long time. So you can do copy cataloging, you can manage your local MARC descriptions in FOLIO just as you do in any other system. We just have this instance abstraction in the middle to help sort of hide the differences, to help enable us to spring forward into a model, to another model later on. You could argue that in some ways that makes FOLIO a slightly more awkward system to use for MARC than one that assumes that MARC is the be all and end all. But what we get for that added complexity is a lot of flexibility, is the ability to move forward and experiment with and implement other formats. In Europe, it is very common to see nationalized bibliographic infrastructure and to see shared cataloging in the cloud as being where you start, and then you bring that data into your library management system, but the maintenance is always in the cloud. So in Germany and in Sweden, we're seeing nationalized infrastructure that FOLIO plugs into using this abstraction. So now it gets exciting, right? Because we're seeing not just one, but multiple different projects that are looking to bring Bibframe into FOLIO in different ways with very different approaches that are happening concurrently. So we're seeing the output, the work of the linked data for production project, the Sinopia metadata editor being integrated experimentally into FOLIO. We are seeing, of course, EBSCO working together with the Library of Congress to implement the MAVA Bibframe cataloging tool, as well as bibliographic infrastructure that EBSCO is building. And then we've got SVDE. And my perspective is that SVDE is an incredibly important candidate as a model for a shared bibliographic infrastructure. And let me talk about why that is and why I think so. we have seen in the library community over the past 20 years, a massive kind of collapse of the infrastructure of vendors into just a very small number of highly consolidated, massive platforms. That has a lot of different impacts in terms of driving innovation, in terms of competition, in terms of library choice, but it also gives an enormous amount of power to the people running those platforms. For me, there's a mirror there in the larger universe where we're seeing just a very small number of massive technology providers owning a huge swath of our public space. We're seeing something similar happening in the library space with OCLC, EBSCO, Claravit, essentially owning the library infrastructure. That is fine for what it is, but I think it's very important to bring into that conversation a notion of trust and co-governance and accountability to set expectations for how these platforms are operated. So what has struck me through all the time that I have known and engaged with the SVDE project is you guys, is the shared community and the sense of a commitment that I see from the crowd at Gazzarini and Cult to engaging with the community and to set a roadmap, to have a commitment to open and non-proprietary data and to open governance. And the open data piece, I think, is really, really hard to overstate when we talk about linked open data. And I want to talk in particular about the notion of identifiers. We have seen some vendors that I won't mention start to create identifiers for linked entity, for entities in a BibFrame environment that come attached with license terms. And I find it really difficult to overstate how toxic I think that kind of behavior is, how much of a mess we can end up with if we start to find identifiers for the bibliographic entities that we depend on out there with URIs, with identifiers that come attached to license terms. So I'm just going to urge you as my little sidebar here, for anyone who encounters such an organization, please encourage them to rethink their life choices. I think SVDE with the JCricket editor is a really strong candidate to be a model of this kind of bibliographic ecosystem. And that's why I think the pilot with Lehigh is incredibly exciting. So super briefly, what we're doing, we are building an automated data flow of bibliograph of entities, of instances, basically, so that you create or change an entity in SVDE, it flows automatically into FOLIO. And you can then attach your holdings in FOLIO. So we're creating an environment where Lehigh wants to experiment. They want to start doing description for certain parts of their collection in BibFrame. And we are trying to automate and build an integrated process. That's going to be a starting point for further learning, right? So we want to move in the direction of bidirectional data flow. We want to explore what it looks like to have hybrid metadata processes that embrace those both formats. What is the boundary between entity management using BibFrame as a substrate or using MARC and traditional kind of authority management processes? Both of them are really trying to get to the same thing. Can we bridge some of those differences? What are the practical considerations around things like staff permissions and authentication? Where is the workflow best executed? Is it easier to do collaborative cataloging in JCricket in a shared environment, or do we want to bring some of the functionality into FOLIO? Where's the best environment to work in? We're hoping to learn a lot more about this. So just in terms of just where we are practically, we're hoping to show this integration in practice later on this year, hopefully at WolfCon, fingers crossed. But again, I see this as a beginning of a journey and as a practical way to start to explore how we can use this in practice. And it's been now, 9 years since 2015. Super exciting for me to see it actually happen in practice after all the years spent talking about this. And with that, thank you.
Sorry, we are moving things around a little bit with some practicalities since we have received one question already from the Zoom Q&A box for Tiziana, but Tiziana will have to leave a little bit earlier for her next presentation at the Library of Congress Bibframe Forum. We are answering this question now so that we can handle that.
Very briefly, I received two different questions. One is possible to use JCricket also to create new entities? Yes, this is one of the main functions of JCricket. I forgot to show you something about this, but this is a very important feature. So it could be considered a new cataloging module for the new generation of catalogers. And the second one is related to how we manage the update that usually and continuously the Library of Congress release for Bibframe. So just to simplify the answer, we have three different approaches for this. One is we continuously update our conversion process. So starting from Mark and to arrive to a Bibframe to release to the library, we have continuously some staff dedicated to update our conversion tool. So this happens in quite a real time. The second is a bit more complex because this means to manage the new feature, new entities within the cluster knowledge base. And in some cases, the process is a bit more long. For example, now we are including the BF Hub as a new entity, and we are already working to have in the cluster knowledge base the hub. And the third one, after I've adapted the cluster knowledge base, we proceed with the API layers so that also JCricket can see and can work with, in this case, the hub, but this happens with every kind of information and a new update. Yes. What about the discovery layer? Is it blacklight? Is it something else for this entity-based RDF data? Or is a SVDE local interface a possibility for local? Yes, SVDE is a possibility for local. So currently we have integrated some external discovery layer, for example, blacklight, viewfind. Yes, but in case the library want to have directly the SVDE layer also as a discovery, this is absolutely possible. But Sebastian, you can.
I just wanted to sneak in a response from the FOLIO side and from the conversations we've had with the team at Lehigh. So FOLIO's inventory can generate MARC records on the fly for things that aren't already described in MARC. So at least one model would be to have an existing old-fashioned discovery layer simply consume synthetic MARC records. That would be leaving on the table like a bunch of the benefits that we're trying to realize here. You can crosswalk, obviously, Bibframe to MARC in different ways, but we're really hoping with Lehigh to explore pulling Bibframe records or Bibframe entities straight into viewfind and extending it and using its ability to deal with that natively. But I would also say I'm really excited about the possibility of having more different kinds of discovery tools. So having a native linked open data capable entity-based discovery tool with the necessary integrations to an ILS to do patron enrichment and authorization and placing requests and all that stuff would be really exciting. But that's the focus here has really been to try to get a full round trip out of share and into viewfinds, which is what Lehigh is using for entities.
Thank you both. And with that, I turn it to Nancy Lorimer from Stanford University. We are running a little bit late, Nancy, so I think you have slightly less than 15 minutes. Thank you. Nancy,
okay, I will
okay,
try to
yes.
keep it fast. I'm good? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good morning to everyone. I am Nancy Lorimer, Associate Director of Metadata Services at Stanford and current chair of the SVDE Sapientia Entity Identification Working Group. I'm here via Zoom today to give you a short update on the SVDE ontology, maybe shorter than I thought I was going to give you. I will note from the start that I only became chair of the working group earlier this year. Most of the work, impetus, and technical work for this ontology was led by Jim Hahn, our former chair, and I would really like to thank him for the huge amount of work he is putting into it and leaving me with really what was the easier part to work on. So today I'll give a brief overview of the basic ontology as it currently stands, and then I'll go further into the development of opus types, our most recent work emphasis. Given the potentially broad audience here, I'm presenting most of this in very simple terms. I apologize to those who wish I would go more into technicalities. So the ontology. Just to give a quick review, as most of you know that are here, and maybe some of you don't, the impetus for its creation was the concept of the SVDE opus, a class intended to gather together closely related BibFrame works. The BibFrame work rests primarily at the expression level in the LRM or Ferber framework. Before the creation of BibFrame hubs, this meant that the related expressions of the same LRM or Ferber work could only be related individually, not to an overall conceptual work. The opus was created to serve this purpose and to cluster these works together. Later, we also added the SVDE work, a subclass of the BibFrame work that was also created in order to gather equivalent BibFrame works from various origins and to relate them directly to the opus. Thus was born the kernel of the SVDE ontology. Once this became a part of the integral part of SVDE, it was decided that the working group should commit this as a formal ontology. A little note about what the SVDE ontology is. Primarily, it is an extension to the BibFrame ontology and cannot be used without it. Its purpose is to aid in the clusterization process of BibFrame works within the SVDE environment, whether those works were originally MARC that was converted to BibFrame or a native BibFrame. It is also intended to aid the clusterization of works originating from other ontologies such as RDA, RDF into the BibFrame environment. SVDE is a true extension to BibFrame. All the BibFrame classes and properties exist and remain in SVDE. Nothing is replaced. An entire BibFrame description still exists within the SVDE environment and can be separated from the ontology if necessary. A quick overview of the sort of skeleton of the ontology. Central to the ontology are the two primary classes, opus and SVDE work. Then we have the opus then also links to the SVDE work through the property SVDE has expression, and also the SVDE work links to BibFrame hubs with the property SVDE in hub. The opus also has a set of individuals or type you see over on the right of your screen that differentiate various categories of opus with the properties SVDE opus type. We'll talk more about those in a moment. Finally, there is an annotation property, SVDE close match, a subproperty of DC terms relation. Now, you may be asking, why does there need to be a class for work or expression or even a close match? That there is one already in SCOS. It allows us to keep the definition specific to the SVDE ontology and to allow specific domains and or ranges not existing in or counter to the BibFrame or RDA term. For SVDE close match, it also allows us to define a relationship between properties and classes in our own terms, whereas SCOS close match only defines relationships between classes. Let's look quickly at the SVDE has expression. Note that in its case, it has a domain of opus and a range of work. This is very unlike BibFrame or the RDA equivalent, which of course would have a domain of RDA work and a range of RDA expression. So this independent property both ties together the ontology and keeps it separate from both BibFrame and RDA. This is not to say that it cannot use other properties from these ontologies. It certainly can and does, particularly BibFrame, but the structural properties are within the local ontology. It is equally important, though, that these new properties have a context, and thus this share VDE close match. Here between the LRM R2, which is work is realized through expression, and the RDA registry element P10078 has expression of work. This annotation states that while there is no direct relationship between it has expression and these two other properties, they are semantically very closely related. So that is a very, very quick overview, and I will leave that part and now move to what we have been concentrating on over the last year, the opus type. The opus type characterizes the various categories that an opus may fall into depending on its primary content. Now, ontology terms, they constitute a list of individuals of the class share VDE opus type. And why these categorizations? Well, in our case, clusterization is again a major impetus. Using only the opus itself, clustering can result in imperfect matching according to LRM and RDA standards due to lack of relevant information. The categories add another piece of data that helps to refine clustering and to provide the user with a deeper structure of visualizing at the opus level. The opus type can also aid in relating the opus to semantically related classes in RDA or LRM and potentially other ontologies. Developing this set of types took us a lot longer than we first anticipated. We needed to balance assumptions brought forward from LRM RDA and from Bibframe on what constitutes a separate concept at this theoretical level, to address areas where these standards seem to fall short, which we actually felt they did, and what was necessary for valid clustering within the mixed share VDE environment. Finally, many of those on the working group have very long experience, both theoretical and practical in this area, and had their own original thoughts to offer. This heady mix made for a great amount of discussion, both arcane and practical, sometimes at the same time. And the next couple slides goes through some of our musings and how the current set of terms evolved. So here was an initial set of types gleaned from various sources, including RDA and the National Library of Norway, who had already done a similar kind of thing in their own local catalog. This is probably not exactly what we started with, but gives a reasonable facsimile of what happened. Many of these terms obviously seem familiar to you all, but perhaps the last three, interactive, live broadcast, and live production, may seem new. From this group, it was clear that some things were missing. We added data set, mostly self-explanatory term, collection, which is primarily for archival collections and similar things, and sounds, for sound that is not music or speech, as in the the RDA content type sounds. Dataset and collection are not actually in RDA itself, though we really felt they were important, and though I believe collection is about to be added to RDA. Another thing we began looking at was some of the terminology. Interactive or interactive multimedia, as it once was in Mark, has always been a difficult to understand term. Finally, for the label for this, we actually ended up with game or interactive media, adding the game bit and dropping the multi, which we hope is a little more clear. More controversially, and after long discussion, we changed text, or what would be textual in RDA, to language. To many of us in the group, textual seemed to be more an expression-based aspect of language, with a spoken version being no different than, say, a musical score and musical performance, which all come under music. And that these two things should cluster together, thus language, which actually is, strangely enough, very much like what happens in Mark in some ways. This means that the RDA vocal work and RDA textual work are now narrow matches to this term. However, we will see how well it works in testing. Continuing on with the refinements, we turn to live broadcast and live production, terms used by an institution mandated to carry recordings, whether audio or video of such things. And these are actually much more common than people might think in library catalogs. While the group understands the importance of the materials in themselves, they did not seem again to be at the opus level, but rather more expression-based. After some discussion with the Library Congress, we settled on calling these opus types events. These are not the same thing as a BibFrame event exactly, but a clusterization that results from the clustering of different works created by that event. BibFrame hubs also is going to end up with, there will be events within the BibFrame hubs as well. So we got this far, and then we turned again to other ontologies and vocabularies to see if we could further refine or add, creating a comparison chart that included BibFrame work classes, which is available in the working groups Google site. RDA work, we did a comparison chart with BibFrame work subclasses, RDA work categorizations, RDA and BibFrame content types, the MARC formats and subformats, and the DCMI work types. This resulted in two final changes. Two final changes to our, there we go. To our types, we added computer program and combined still and moving image. And just to comment a little on this last, we had difficulty in naming and defining the moving image type of film things at the opus level. Again, it seemed definable only by its expression attributes as a contrast to a still image, which did not seem really to work. Also, the difference between moving and still images, while never absolute, is becoming less and less clear, if not just press on a picture on your iPhone. Then we saw the DCMI work types actually combined these two, still images and moving images, into one image. And that struck a chord with us, and we choose to combine them as one as well. So these are our opus types, the current list. The only other additions are other and unspecified, both of which are necessary for clustering and further refinement down the road, though not particularly useful to a user. You notice for the URI, which is on name, which is on the left, we added opus to keep clear what these were part of, but we gave much more user-friendly labels. So these terms will be available for testing by users of JCricket in the near future, and catalogers will be able to add these terms, especially when it's not possible to do so through machine processing, which happens with a couple of them, to help refine clustering. We welcome comments and suggestions and fully expect the terms to evolve further once we see how they work in production. And here will be a couple examples for you to look at that just shows the matches between different sets of terms, which I'll just skip over. And we have also begun to add some mapping, work on some mapping. So this is quite preliminary so far. So that is my very quick update on the ontology, and I want to thank all the members of the working group with shout outs, particularly to Thurston and Audrey, and especially, of course, to Jim. I hope you find it useful, and we'll welcome any questions you have at the end. So I believe we will now move on, and I would like to introduce Claudio Forziati, representing the Federico University in Naples on the shared catalog Unimarc-Bibframe mappings.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Claudio Forziati. I'm a librarian at University of Naples Federico II in Italy, and I'm a member of the shared catalog project. I wish to thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity to share our experience, and now I try to share my screen. Okay. So let's start with who we are. Shared Catalog is an initiative that involves many universities in southern Italy. The initiative is part of a broader agreement between these universities to share services projects from on-site library services for institutional users to shared platforms for digital publishing in open access. Shared Catalogue has been in production since 2016, and since then it has gone through various developments, including the full upload of the authority records of the University of Naples in 2017, and property proposal in Wikidata related to agent identifiers that was intended to improve interaction with the Wikimedia knowledge base. This part of the project was born out of an aspiration, namely to use the information density of Wikidata for different and often unusual types of analysis. Here I list just a few examples. Meanwhile, the LOT platform was evolving, and we were also interested in evolving our project in that direction. To bring Shared Catalogue from the LOT platform 1.0 to the one we can actually see in SVDE, some actions had to be designed, among which, in our opinion, the most important was an updated mapping between Unimarc and Bibframe. That's because most of the libraries in our LOT catalog use Unimarc in their LSPs. Moreover, this means also that we could bypass the intermediate data transformations, namely going through Mark 21. To carry out the mapping, we used many existing sources. Of course, we started with the analysis of Mark 21 to Bibframe 2.0 conversion specifications. Along with this, we used the Unimarc third edition updates 2009-2022, and here I must add the note: we did not use the 2023 online edition because the first revision of the work was completed shortly before its publication. This means that we will have to take this new edition into account as soon as we realize that our work will require a further revision. Other sources were, for example, Unimarc 2 Mark 21 conversion specifications version 3, the Italian cataloging rules RECAT, and controlled vocabularies, and some documentation for specific kind of resources like the Bredense library for music special collections and so on. This work was not expected to be short, and we feel we could only start with an updated analysis, detailed comparison of the two MARC formats, starting this time from Unimarc. After this was done, it was a matter of studying the conversion specifications to Bibframe and looking for matches. Sometimes it was quite simple, like in this case, and also in this case. Sometimes it was a bit challenging because of the different structure and function of tags used for the same type of information between Unimarc and Mark 21. But we managed to fulfill the mapping anyway to the best of our knowledge. Once the mapping was finished, we asked ourselves how to make it available for widespread use in the professional community. As for all the work done with within Shared Catalogue, we wanted to follow the principles of openness and interoperability, and our aim was also to transform the mapping from the tabular form into a structured format with statements in form of triples and without a loss of relevant information. So our working group, our technical group, opted to create a dedicated Wikibase instance on Wikibase Cloud. Why Wikibase Cloud is easy to explain. First of all, it's Wikibase, the technology behind Wikidata. Wikidata is a project in which we were also active as individual users. Other reasons are very easy to use user documentation. Also, there's no need of procedures for updating and maintenance. Most of the editing tools are pre-installed, and also there's a very active community, mostly on Telegram. So we started our Wikibase, named Shared Catalog Mapping Knowledge Base. Here you can see the homepage in Italian language. A Wikibase item works as in Wikidata. Statements can be expressed in a data type selected during the creation of a property. Furthermore, statements can be enriched by additional qualifiers and references. And this feature was very, very helpful for to declare the update used in the mapping for a specific tag and embed the link to the related document. So here you can see an actual item of a Unimarc tag in our Wikibase instance. Currently, this wiki is in its enrichment phase, and the work is now focused on finishing the creation of all Unimarc tags, subfields, and indicators, as well as creating properties to complete the data model. At this stage, we are still missing the properties related to the association of Bibframe attributes to different tags and subfields. However, we asked ourselves how we could make the work we made until now available through the wiki in a way that it could be easily imported. So we came up with the idea of creating a property whose value was a link to an internal page of the wiki, where there is the conversion table of a specific Unimarc tag described in the item. In this way, thanks to a simple import function such as import HTML, like in this example shown, I can have the data in table format for my external file and freely work on it. So to conclude, we are in the implementation of this side project, if we can call it that. We are also aware that it's incomplete and will be imperfect for some time to come, but you know, it's a wiki. It's constantly improvable by design. Our hope is that once we feel satisfied enough to open the wiki to users outside our organization, there will be colleagues interested in helping out and making it a little less incomplete. So thanks for having me. I also want to thank you on behalf of our working group, and I hope to see you soon again. Now I'll leave the floor to Andrea Gazzarini, Share Family Tech Lead.
Thank you, Claudio. Let me share my screen. Okay, you see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, just one moment, presentation mode. Okay, so as Claudio said, my name is Andrea Gazzarini, and apart from non-relevant things in this context, I'm the Share Family lead architect. In this talk, in this brief presentation, we will try to give you an overview of the new approach that we are using for providing RDF data. You know, SVDE is an RDF-based project, and we need to provide RDF data. We are doing that using very cool and interesting approach called linked data fragments. And what are linked data fragments? We know that in our experience, data can be provided using a SPARQL service, a SPARQL endpoint in front of an RDF storage a dedicated RDF storage. That endpoints offers a very powerful access to our data, but when the data set grows and the data that we have to manage is important, let's say huge, as it happens in SVDE, we noticed that the infrastructure costs are very, very high. Actually, reliable and scalable SparkQL servers are on premises and in cloud are usually expensive. On the other hand, another option to consume RDF data is to download wherever is possible, like in BF, for example, the entire dataset or a partial view of the entire dataset and use that locally in several ways. We can store in a local RDF storage, we can index the data in a search engine. Even this option, when the data set is huge, involves, of course, local resources and can be expensive. The linked data fragment helps us to see if there is a compromise between the two options. And that's why the sentence, have we explored all options in between? So how we can provide RDF data and at the same time have an efficient infrastructure from resource consumption and querying perspective. So linked data fragments represent a very interesting approach for answering to the question above. The architecture, the linked data fragments architecture divides basically the responsibility of the query execution and computation across two different types of players. A client, which provides, the naming is a bit strange because the client is actually the server for the caller, for the RDF data consumer. In any case, we will see in the next slide, the client that provides the SparkQL endpoint, the query pre-processing, the optimization, and the structuring of that query into atomic clauses that can be executed independently and possibly in parallel. And here comes the second role, the linked data fragments server, which is in charge to execute those atomic requests. So a simple diagram where on the left side we can see the clients that are requesting data using SparkQL, the SparkQL in the example below, and the linked data fragments client that provides the SparkQL endpoints. That's why I said that it's the server for the RDF data consumer that computes the query execution plan and divides in this simple example the entire SparkQL in three different clauses that we call triple patterns. And each of them is executed potentially by a different linked data server that allows to share very easily the right part and to improve the overall efficiency of the query execution. So how we use the linked data fragments in SVDE? The diagram is similar what we described previously. So we have the clients, we have the RDF client, which is our SparkQL endpoint, and each query is destructured in several triple or quad patterns, because we could have a 4-dimension, the graph, the context. And on the right side, we have a given number of RDF servers that can grow, that can better increase or decrease depending on the load, basically. Where do the RDF servers retrieve the data from? From the CKB, that is represented on the right side, specifically the RDBMS and the search engine. Two things to note. The first is that we do not have a dedicated RDF store. We do not store RDF naturally in a given using a given ontology. We have a storage which is unaware about a specific ontology. And the RDF that is served to the client on the left is basically generated on the fly. That opens a lot of possibilities, of interesting possibilities. So we do not have, again, any RDF storage. And we said, we saw that in our experience that are very, very expensive components, especially when the data grows. There is a distributed computation because the load of the query execution is spread across a scalable number of components that we can increase or decrease depending on the overall load. And the real benefit is that everything happens at query time. So I wrote request-driven result. Why? Because the SparkQL endpoint, which is served through HTTP, can use the SparkQL request, can use regular HTTP mechanism for asking additional things other than supplying the query. So the same query could, through some metadata, some request metadata called HTTP headers, could request the results in a different ontology. So the results are generated, remember, the results are generated on the fly. So I could be interested in retrieving the people that we have in the knowledge base, in using and in the response, I want the system to use the fourth ontology. Or another requester could prefer Bibframe or whatever, or a simple doubling core mapping for people, for instances, for example. And that could happen at request time. This is the very interesting thing. There is no fixed mapping on the server side. Using the same logic, we know that a SVDE entity is created by the contribution of several institutions. So that means if we have a J.K. Rowling, for example, it's an agent in SVDE with a URI, a unique URI, and the attributes could be contributed by several institutions, let's say A, B, C, and D. Using the SparkQL endpoint with additional metadata header, I could request, using the same query, only the data coming from 1, 2, 3, or all contributors. I was saying provenance because in SVDE we call provenance the contributions. because we always retain the source of a specific contribution. And last but not least, the linked data fragments architecture is a distributed architecture. So the federated search, I mean, the intersection between the knowledge base and other sources that are linked data fragments compliant, like Wikidata or Wikipedia, is natively enabled. In a SparkQL query, I can mix Wikidata, say Wikidata triple patterns and SVDE triple patterns. Also, this thing with all the disadvantages of distributed systems is actually very, very interesting. And that's basically all. It's a quick, very super quick overview of this interesting approach. And last thing, we are going to explore in a deeper way the approach with concrete examples and possibly a live demo in October, because the paper we submitted that includes our proposal, the usage of linked data fragments in SVDE, has been accepted in the DCMI conference. I guess that's all. So, Anna, do I have to pass back to you?
So, thank you to all of our presenters. We'd like to open the floor to questions. If anyone has one, please raise your hand and we'll bring the mic to you. And for those of you joining us remotely, if you have questions, you can also enter them in the chat of the Zoom.
Hi, my name is Elisa C. I'm from the University of Toronto, where I work as a metadata librarian, and I also teach as an educator. I'm very curious to know if there are any plans in the future to look at establishing formal alignments of SVDE extended BibFrame ontology with other types of ontologies such as RDA ontology. And I guess I ask this because it sounds like the Sapienta Entity Identification Working Group has already attempted to do some of that early matching of entities. And as an educator, I find that oftentimes new creators of metadata may need a little bit more instruction and guidance on what kinds of information to populate into a particular field. And sometimes looking just at the labels within an ontology or just the definitions may not give them enough guidance. So I apologize, this is a very long question.
So already in the ontology, we do have, as we have the share with the ShareVDE close match in cases with the Opus and the ShareVDE work. And also the Opus types do have close match and narrower match, etc., with various vocabularies, including RDA and National Library of Norway, and with sometimes even RDA content types. So some of that is there. So I would say, though, that most of the time, particularly the shared VDE work, but also the opus, are primarily machine created. And when people start working in JCricket, obviously they need to know something about dividing things up because of the because you can actually divide or combine various an opus if you feel it's done wrong. But I think this is something that takes some practice and learning within the shared VDE environment first. Even because we are bringing in data from various types of converted mark and from BibFrame proper and from RDA, RDF, the what goes where can get pretty complicated, and it will take some time to work all these parts out, but we are working towards that, yes. I don't know if that really answers your question, but it's an attempt.
Thank you. I see that we have a couple of questions in the Q&A box in Zoom, and Nancy, probably the first one is also for you, or at least I'll try. I'm reading the question out loud for the audience here in San Diego from Laura Ackerman. In order not to omit important aspects of description in MARC that relate to items, particularly for art and rare materials, and to support RDA concept of aggregates, BibFrame would need to evolve. Has SVDE and its related products anticipated these challenges? Nancy, would you like to try answer, or?
I can try. Okay, at the moment, ShareVD is not working with items in particular. Those go to local catalogs, I think, primarily still. And I know that art and rare materials is there is a lot of work done on that. But basically, most of ShareVDE is working on aggregating data, not data that is specific to individual items. The RDA concept of aggregates, I think I would not completely agree that BibFrame needs to evolve in that. Maybe how we use BibFrame needs to evolve a little bit, but BibFrame is completely capable of supporting aggregates. I mean, it's completely able. Some of the actual properties might need to change a little to support LRM as opposed to sort of the Ferber concept of aggregates. But that is a BibFrame issue and not so much a ShareVDE issue.
Thank you, Nancy. And I'm also reading another question that came through the Zoom Q&A box. Could you provide more information about how SVDE ontology uses quotes, and does it relate to some people's definition of provenance for the data or metadata about the description? Actually, Andrea Gazzarini already replied in written to this question. I'm reading the answer, and if anyone wants to comment further, do feel free. In the current implementation, the fourth dimension is used for denoting the provenance. So the provenance URI, for example, Stanford provenance. In the new version, this will probably disappear, as we would like to use prov-o for dealing with provenances.
So I see that Luisa Gagini has her hand raised.
Just a reminder that for questions to be posted on Zoom, please use the Q&A box. I don't think that the chat is enabled for online attendees.
Okay, if that is all the questions, I'd like to thank everyone again for attending today's workshop. And if you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out to Share VDE, or you can check our resources that will be made available in the slides if you'd like to, inform yourself in private on your own time. Thank you once again. It was nice seeing everyone.